Hello, hello again. What's good, you guys? My name is Brooke. I am a twin flame in union with my beloved counterpart, Danny. My subscribers, my tribe. Good to see you guys again. I love you guys. So, we're continuing the series of Mary Magdalene today. Also, if you are new, welcome to the Empire of Neutrality. We're going to continue the series of Mary Magdalene Revealed. However, I've been reading like these little side chapters within the chapters. I don't know, maybe there's like a word for it, but you see how it's like a dark page? There's like these little chapters with stories. And then there's like regular chapters. You see that? So that's what I've been reading. However, I read this one on my channel, Empress of Duality. And it's just so good. I have to read it again on this channel. I could just go download it and upload it, but we're going to redo it just because I love reading this chapter. It touches my heart, my soul on so many levels. And it also talks about like the seven powers, and it talks about the power of wrath, rage, right? So, and I think it's important to read after the third power, ignorance, right? Where she talks about leaving her body. And she's mentioned that several times, if you notice that, someone confused her as an object and didn't realize that they severed her from her body. So I'm going to share this chapter with you guys. So let's begin. Let's do this. The chapter is called Why I Am Proud to Be an Impala. And this one has scripture from Mary's Gospel. So let's start with that. The first form is darkness. The second is desire or craving. The third is ignorance. The fourth is zeal for death. The fifth is the realm of the flesh. The sixth is the foolish wisdom of the flesh. The foolish wisdom of the flesh. Interesting, right? How can it be foolish and wisdom in the same thing? And the seventh is the wisdom of the wrathful person. These are the seven powers of wrath. Mary 9:18 through 25. Ooh. The definition of a pilgrimage is simply a journey to a sacred place as a demonstration of devotion. What compels us to become so devoted that we're willing to leave home for weeks, even months at a time, and travel halfway around the world away from family and loved ones in order to reach this sacred place? That is a more complex mystery. All I can say is that I wish it wasn't compulsory, but it is, or it has been for me. And this has posed immense challenges because I have the constitution of a cloistered nun. I don't travel well. Okay, that's a massive understatement. I am one of the world's worst travelers. I am that anxious, sweaty, ugly crying mess next to you when the plane hits turbulence. I am the backseat driver pointing out a sharp curve in the road up ahead to the bus driver. I can't relax on anything that moves. I was asked to speak at an event in the south of France, which then meant I could finally visit Mary Magdalene's cave. And I was asked to give a workshop based on my first book, Reveal, in Devon, England, which then meant I could visit Glastonbury again and the red and white spring. So even though, as always, I just wanted to remain in my cozy apartment, take care of my sweet little man, and stay the hell still, I said yes. I said yes because I heard yes, if you know what I mean. I didn't think about it or listen to the way my ego took off and started panicking. I felt the yes. It was sitting there inside of me like the only grown up in the room filled with toddlers. Moving home to Cleveland meant that I no longer had to keep moving. I didn't have to be subject to the whims and greed of landlords raising rent beyond my means. I could own my apartment. I could make a new beginning as an ending mom, a life that looked a lot more like thriving rather than just surviving. But moving home to Cleveland also meant coming face to face with all of the reasons why it never felt like home to me. The assault I experienced as a little girl at a friend's house, and the inability to sleep for years after, or feel safe at night, or fly without sheer panic and dread, it was all still here, waiting for me when I returned. And with those memories came a panic disorder, because the body never lies, and the body never forgets. I had already talked my way through years of therapy, and I was grateful for the clarity it gave me. But this return demonstrated to me that I had never healed all the way down and all the way through. I had managed. I had found ways to cope with the anxiety and fear that coursed through me most of the time, every day. I practiced the soul voice meditation. I did yoga or walked or danced or hula hooped. I found a way every day to express the excess energy so that it wasn't harnessed for a panic attack. And I chanted the prayer of the heart that Penny had taught me. Whenever the panic started to course through my veins in a way that made me feel certain I was about to leave my body altogether, I chanted from the inner calm of my heart, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. Mary 9:18's full list of the 7 powers that exist within us for me is both the most humbling and the most helpful for being human. It reads like an ingredients label of the ego. It's not suggesting that we all contain each of these elements in equal measure, but if we can understand it, it's giving us an informative list of the powers of the ego that can potentially, for hours, days, years at a time, hold us captive. The first is darkness. I experience this as a heaviness, depression, that feeling of being trapped or constricted, that sensation that things suck and always will suck. That there isn't a light at the end of the tunnel, there's just more tunnel, helpless, hopeless, and thinking I'm alone. The second is desire, or as Cynthia Burgo translates it, craving. For me, desire or craving is clinging, wishing things could have been different. I get seduced by this power frequently. Attachment to what I want, which is usually light years ahead from what I actually need. This is essentially wanting to be where I am not. The third is ignorance. This comes in the form of my lack of awareness. This is when I'm unconscious about something, and sometimes we need to be unconscious. It's important to make clear that this ignorance isn't an indication of, of a deficit of character or intelligence. It can actually be integral to healing. We can only see so much at once. We sometimes need to open our awareness about an aspect of ourselves or an event that happened in our lives in increments, and this is actually wise. The ignorance Mary is talking about is different. It's about the unconscious states we can fall into and then act from. The fourth is zeal for death, or the craving for death. This sounds exponentially odd. It later becomes, within Christianity's 7 deadly sins, the sin of gluttony. Also, a strange and rarely used word, but easier to understand. It's about making choices in our lives that endanger our health or impair our longevity, eating, drinking, and having sex in ways that neglect and harm the body. So, to be clear, it's not an attending to the body or indulging in anything that gives us pleasure is a sin or a power of the ego. There is no such thing as sin. It's when we do this to an extreme that actually harms the body. It's that human tendency in us to be destructive towards the body, to take our pain out on the least deserving thing possible, our own body. This is where the ego can take us if we're lost in its power and we've completely forgotten the soul. The fifth is the realm of the flesh, or enslavement to the physical body. This, to me, is when we're entirely identified with being a body and only a body. It's the power that's later defined as lust. But I think it's important to distinguish something. Lustful people are my favorite humans to encounter. I feel more alive around them. I had a boyfriend who could eat a meal in a way that made me jealous of everything on his plate. He lusted after his food. He lusted after my body in the same passionate way. And it was bliss. Lust, for me at least, isn't the issue. It's our relationship to it. Does it derail us almost entirely from our work, or does it fuel and inspire it? Does it harm the people we love, or does it light them up, like my boyfriend's lust lit me up? For me, as a woman, as a survivor, it's a triumph to be lustful, to be present in my body during sex. It's an uncelebrated victory. Where the fifth power can trip us up is when we forget that we are also a soul, not just this passionate body with its fiery needs. And its most explicitity applies to when that lust includes a sacrilegious transgression of forcing our physical needs on someone who does not consent to them. The sixth is the foolish wisdom of the flesh, or the false peace of the flesh. This power later comes to be referred to as sloth. This one took me the longest to unpack. First of all, I am insanely in love with sloths, actual sloths. My son and I watched non-stop Animal Planet videos of baby sloths doing just about anything, and we melt. We've even perfected the baby sloth cry. So, sloth does nothing for me in terms of understanding of power, of the ego. And then second, this original description from Mary's gospel as the foolish wisdom of the flesh, this trips me up as well. I think it has taken us a long time to understand that the body is wise. The body has been manipulated and vilified for millennia as the scapegoat for our own vices. It has taken the sexual revolution and the feminist movement to reclaim the body, to understand that we can trust the body to take us to realms of pleasure and joy that don't have to be separate from our spirituality or religion. That we can trust the body when it comes to nutrition and craving foods that we need or that just bring us pleasure when we are not in a cycle of addiction. I was gonna pause it, but we hanging out. I'm gonna have to take a sip of drink. I just had a friend. She wrote a book and she read the audiobook. By the way, Meggan Waterson, she reads her own audiobook and it's awesome. Like, it's so awesome. Having the book in front of you and then having the audiobook and hearing her voice and feeling her energy as she reads her own book. That's how you read a book, okay? Nobody ever taught me that. I discovered it on my own and I was like, this is how it's done. This is how you should read a book. Okay. That we can trust the body when it comes to altering us to alerting us to a dangerous situation or person, that we can trust the body to make us aware of needing to slow down or decrease our stress levels, that we can trust the body to heal, that we can trust the body is more than just a machine to use and misuse at the ego's whim, that we can trust the body has wisdom and intellect that intellect can never grasp. And with that being said, I want to add something. That we can trust the body has wisdom the intellect can never grasp. Like the way a woman's body forms another body within her even as she sleeps. What this reminds me of, that the body holds wisdom, that the intellect can't really process yet. I say yet for a reason, because I feel like that is the whole unraveling of humanity's consciousness. The evolution of what it means to be human is at some point being able to truly receive, process, and understand on a much deeper level the wisdom that spirit has to offer, the wisdom of the body, the wisdom of the unknown or unseen world, right? And the first time I ever really experienced something like this was with Danny. This was my twin flame. And I noticed when we were being intimate and when I would touch on his body, when I would kiss all over his body, and when we would make love, something interesting would happen. It's like as my hands, would go run across his body, these different areas of his body, his chest, his belly, all over. I noticed that there were these energy portals, if you want to see them that way, whereas my hand would cross this spot on his body, it would like activate and it would open. However, there has to be a certain level of safety felt between the two individuals. So, for twin flames, this is something that, you probably experience more often than with, a regular or someone else. Okay. And I say that because the hardship that twin flames go through, the challenges, the pain, the grids that we go into to clean up, to heal, that struggle that it creates, it also gives birth to such a deep trust and love between you two. You ever notice that, like with your friends? You have a much deeper connection with your friends that you've really been through thick and thin with. There's just this unbreakable bond, this unbreakable trust, this unbreakable love, undying love, right? And it's like the same thing with twin flames. We come together, we conquer many, many obstacles individually as a couple, and then also a part of being within the twin flame journey is taking those obstacles, taking what you've learned, and also being able to incorporate that into the collective, into society, because that's the purpose, right? To become undivided within self, undivided between you and your counterpart, and then being that example in the world, showing other people how to reside within unity consciousness. And, it was just one of the most beautiful things to experience his body. Trust me, to experience his sacredness open up to me, just by my hands being on his body and the trust and love that's there. It creates this bridge to where not only do I have access to who he is in this life, but I have access to his soul. And you don't have to just be physically intimate to access this, right? You know, a lot of twins, they see their twin before they meet them, or they feel them even when they're not together, and it's because of the bond that is there, that is unbreakable. Or you are always in connection with your twin. It's just sometimes you can't feel that connection to them because of pain, or toxic energy that's stuck and suppressed, and the body creates blocks, almost like static in the connection, right? Mental blocks block out the connection between you and your twin. And even when you are having sex with your twin, it's, you know, I'm going to use a man and a woman just because that's easier for me to talk about, right? That's what I experience. But it doesn't have to be a male and a female, right? Just so you know. But, you know, when your partner is inside of you, you know, even then there are portals within your body that if they pleasure you a certain way, and there's that trust, there's that love, that loyalty, it opens up portals, right? It opens up forces of energy that give you deeper access to the essence of their soul, to the essence of their energy. And what's funny, once you in the physical begin to open those portals through intimacy, right? It has to be some form of intimacy. Into me, I see, right? Whether it's physical, emotional, mental, it doesn't matter, but the intimacy level has to be there. The surrender has to be there. The trust and the love has to be there. And once you kind of access that on a physical level, then things like your twin being at home and you're at the beach, and then you have a thought about them, intimate thought about them, and then all of a sudden you feel aroused, you feel turned on, you feel pleasure. And energetically, it's almost like this feeling of sex, right? Maybe some of you have experienced this. Please let me know. Would love to hear, you know, if you've had your own personal experience of this. But it's crazy, it's deep, it's beautiful, you know. When you first get on the journey and you're awakening to like what all of this is, it's fun. But then when you really start to experience God's love, when you start to experience unity consciousness and the pleasure that it brings, the wisdom that surfaces, it's such a extraordinary thing. But anyways, didn't think we were going to talk about twin flame sex. Mary Magdalene. Jesus. I see y'all. Y'all ain't sneaky. Okay. Let's continue. Where were we? Like a woman's body forms another body within her as she sleeps. That we can trust the body to tell us who we feel at home with. If we know how to listen, the body has wisdom, blood memory that reaches back through the centuries and carries the echoes of our ancestors. What this sixth power has come to mean to me is that there is a resonance to change, a reluctance to do what we know is best for us. And we can feel this viscerally in the body. There's a sluggishness, a tendency towards inertia. If we are headed to the couch the second we get from work, that routine will be arduous to break. The body becomes easily habituated, meaning the routines we create can become ingrained in us. The body is so loyal. And if we develop patterns of inaction, we will have to contend with a body that doesn't really want to do anything. The seventh power is the power we all probably understand and know most intimately. The seventh power in the Gospel of Mary is the wisdom of the wrathful person, or the compulsion of rage. It almost sounds like Christ or Mary, since Christ is the one who originally gave this list to Mary, is being sardonic, right? If this is a power of the ego, a power that keeps us from knowing our true self, then how could a wrathful person be wise? For me, similar to the power of lust or the realm of the flesh, anger is healing. To feel and express my anger feels healthy. Anger creates appropriate boundaries with people who aren't supporting us or who aren't good for us to be around. Anger can flood the system with a sense of clarity and purpose. We sometimes know what we stand for and what we care most about from the presence of anger. Anger protects us and often protects others we love and those who can't defend themselves. Anger, for anyone who has been silenced or made to feel insignificant, is a declaration that they actually matter, that their voice matters, that they are not to be silenced ever again. Anger in these situations, y'all ready for this, is holy. Anger in the face of injustice is an act of love. It's a statement of unifying ourselves with a stranger and saying, I won't let you be treated as I would not want to be treated myself. Anger can be motivating and unifying. As the mystic William Blake relates, the voice of honest indignation is the voice of God. And also, anger can devour us from the inside out. Anger can divide. It's so compelling. It can derail and distract many of us for most of our lives. And this is how I think we best understand the destructive side of anger. It's simply when we get overcome by it, we can live in anger or we can act on our anger in ways that we will regret for the rest of our lives. This next part is important. As with all the powers, it isn't the power itself that's harmful. It's the presence of the power and the absence of the soul. It's forgetting entirely that we are not just the ego that is subject to the power. So, even as we are more enraged than we have ever been, even if we have every right to be, and it's healthy and normal for us to be angry, if we forget that there's this equally significant part of us that is calm, still water beneath it all, then we will inflict our rage onto someone else. And whether that person is undeserving of that rage or in our eyes deserving of it, all it does is bind us to that person and perpetuate a cycle of rage. As the brilliant comedian Hannah Gadsby relates about her sexual assault in Nanette, I have a right to be angry, but not to spread it. We know that hurt people, and this is a source of compassion we can access when we need relief from our anger. But ultimately, the seventh power is about the responsibility we need to take for that rage that can compel us to treat ourselves and others in ways that can hardly believe we're capable of. I think it's the seventh power because it's the hardest to come to terms with. How do we responsibly express our rage? How do we let anger motivate and mobilize us without burning us out or burning the house down? Anger is the seventh, I think, also because it's often the reason we become more vulnerable to the other six powers of the ego. We're angry at the person who has harmed us, so we fall into a depression, or we cling obsessively to what could have been, or we harm ourselves physically by overeating or drinking or taking drugs in an effort to deal with that rage. And it's just a tangled, gritty mess, and we feel trapped. So, on the other hand, it's daunting to take in all seven powers at once. Holy crap. Look at what we have to contend with. Look at all the derailing powers that we contain. And yet, on the other hand, it feels like such a relief. Like, welcome to being human. This is normal. You binge watching Netflix to forget your pain, you drinking red wine like it's a secret elixir for all your fears, you sobbing over a divorce that happened 7 years ago, you angry at what happened to you as a little girl and enraged any time you even hear of it happening to someone else, you, human being, you, welcome. You're not alone. You're not odd or strange or actually different at all. You're meant to feel all of these things, and none of these feelings, these powers, make you less holy. They connect you, they make you, you. And this is the part of the whole point of being here, to feel these horrible and hard derailing things and to find your way back to love. So this time, when the anxiety disorder came back, I was armed with the roadmap of my own humanity that Mary's gospel had given me. It gave me the perspective to notice these powers rear up and get louder, and to know that they're nothing to be ashamed of, or afraid of, or to judge. I can be depressed and angry. I am human. And I can choose to use the presence of each of these powers as an opportunity to learn to strengthen my capacity to return to love. A close friend of mine suggested EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. She had recently remembered a childhood sexual assault and found that this form of therapy was powerful because it released the trauma that was still trapped there in the body. I found a therapist and began work 3 months before my pilgrimage to Mary Magdalene. Trauma lives present in the body. Trauma lives in the body in present tense. And many illnesses stem from that truth. Because the body, as our most faithful warrior, will hold for us what we cannot face ourselves, until we live into the strength to go all the way back and experience it for the first time long after it has actually happened. My body had waited for me all these years to return now that I'm filled with a fierce love that flows through me as much as often as I can remember that it does. Now that I'm home in my body, my beloved body can give back to me what it held for me for all those years. During a particularly powerful session, my therapist told me a story, and his stories were always medicine told with intention. It went something like this. This is the good part. A cheetah is stalking a herd of impala. And if one united an entirely connected mass, the herd senses the cheetah at the same moment and begins to flee at top speed. A young impala falters and gets delayed just for a split second, but that's time enough for the cheetah to pounce. At the moment of contact, the impala falls to the ground as if instantly struck dead, but it isn't. And it isn't pretending to be dead either. It has fallen into an instinctive and involuntary altered state of consciousness shared by all mammals when death appears imminent. What happened? Psychologists call this state the immobility state or the freezing response. The other two responses to extreme situations of impending doom are fight or flight. These two states are very well known and researched, but this third state is less known, and little is understood about this altered state of immobility. But nature has developed it for two main reasons. First, it serves as a last-ditch effort to survive. The impala in its altered state is dragged back to the tree in the shade, and thinking the impala is dead, the cheetah is not on alert. So with its guard down while turning its back, the impala can leap up, shake off the effects of the immobility response, and escape. The second reason is that while in this altered state, the impala can't feel pain. It's a prehistoric function developed so that in our last moments we die before we're even killed. It is not under our conscious control. It's about energy and the nervous system. Humans and animals share this same capacity to play possum. The difference is the impala can simply shake off the experience to release the energy of trauma without a storyline or subsequent symptoms. Humans, though, especially with this third response to trauma, can develop PTSD and anxiety disorders from the energy of death being trapped in the body. Trauma expert Peter Levine, in Waking the Tiger, explains that this residual energy does not simply go away. It persists in the body and often forces the formation of a wide variety of symptoms. I had always thought of fight or flight as at least doing something, but this third option, freeze, had always felt like a failure to me. Freeze felt passive, or worse, it felt cowardly. I had tears streaming down my face. It was all beginning to make sense because I was beginning to understand what kept me from healing all the way back and all the way through. I had never been able to reconcile this feisty, brave, and precocious girl I was before the assault, and then the fact that I didn't fight, didn't scream, didn't even move. I wept as my therapist reached for the tissues and set them gently beside me. I had been haunted by this unease of not knowing why I didn't protect myself. There was a part of me that never trusted myself in the same way again, with that same level of ease and love. I had lost a lot that night, and the greatest of which was this unfaltering belief in myself. Now I understood. I did fight back. I froze. I froze because I ardently believed I wouldn't survive the assault. I died before I could be killed. I froze because the animal instinct in me kicked in and it saved me from having to experience the pain. I did exactly what I was supposed to. I hadn't failed. I'd saved my own life. Woo! That's some deep shit. All the feels. I love this book. I love it. I fucking love it. Okay. Here we go, you guys. That was not one of the mini chapters, but that was an actual chapter. You see the difference, right? You see the difference in depth. Okay. I love you guys. Don't forget to drop a like, and I will see you soon. Bye.